Hello, I'm Mitch Fox, president of the Nevada Broadcasters Association, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Nevada on the Air, a program that highlights the leaders and innovators and out-of-the-box thinkers who are shaking things up and making a big difference in communities throughout the state of Nevada. I'm extremely pleased to have State Senator Kelvin Atkinson on the program. After serving a decade in the Nevada State Assembly, Senator Atkinson ran for the State Senate in 2012, where he's been serving the residents of District 4 ever since. So, Senator, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's just dive right in. You know, we just finished the anniversary of a very, very tragic event, the 1 October event here on the Las Vegas Strip. And some attention was refocused then on the whole debate of gun control. We had that background check initiative passed by voters in 2016. That's kind of in limbo right now. How do you see the Nevada State Legislature addressing this issue?
Well, you know, a couple of things. And first of all, you know, addressing yesterday the anniversary of October 1st and the tragedies that happened here in our state. Just wanted to, you know, give a kind of a shout out to those folks that are still suffering, families that are still suffering. People don't really understand how much people are still suffering from October 1st. Me and some colleagues were saying yesterday we kind of felt funny all day yesterday, and it kind of hit us to just, you know, I think it was just a continuum, but, you know, we're a little bit removed from the victims and their families that were affected and are going to be dealing with it for a long time. So I wanted to give our respect to them first.
Absolutely.
And then to answer your question about gun control, yeah, you know, well, we have some folks that are very, very passionate about the issue. We have, you know, every town and some others that are spending significant time here talking to people. Congresswoman Giffords was here yesterday as well, and people are having conversations with her, you know, about what happened with her in Arizona, and trying to figure out what we need to do, and more particularly on the state level, because there's some federal stuff that needs to be done. I saw the president yesterday talking about, you know, doing something with the bump stock and making it and outlawing them throughout the United States. And certainly we have a few members in our body that are also taking a look at the issue. Senator Kinsella has a bill that I believe is going to do quite that as well. I know I'm a co-sponsor on that bill, and we have a litany of other legislators looking at some stuff to kind of do something about it. I know people are kind of tired of us having lip service towards the issue and want us to take some action. You know, some of those things we can take action on statewide, but some of that stuff's going to have to come out from our federal delegation.
Let's turn to another issue, and that has to do with marijuana. You know, there's a certain expectation for revenue for marijuana. It's exceeded those expectations. And of course, with the revenue going to public education, people were very hopeful about that. But there's been some challenges along the way in terms of making sure that public schools get the revenue that they want. And so where are we with that in terms of the public school funding issue with respect to marijuana?
Well, look, you know, public school funding has always been a #1 issue for our legislative body since I've been there. I've been there 16 years, and we've made small steps to correct or try to make sure that our education system is taken care of in a better fashion than it has been in the past. You know, we went through a recession, and everything that we had done for education under, you know, previous leadership with, you know, Speaker Buckley and Perkins and others, we made significant grounds. You know, then Governor Gwynn, you know, largest tax increase in state's history was at that time, making sure that we could fund education to the levels that it needed to be, made great progress. And guess what? We had a recession, and, you know, the hardest hit in the budget was education. 65 or some odd percent of the budget, 60 or 65, is education. And so obviously when you're making cuts, that's where you're going to go. And so this governor, Sandoval, thought outside the box, and our colleagues saw fit with him to pass, you know, another budget under his leadership to fund education. And I think we did a great job of doing that. Some of those will take time to see how those progress and work. No legislation that you pass today shows significantly the next year besides the marijuana dollars. And so marijuana dollars are definitely performing at a much higher rate than we projection than we had, and so there will be additional money. How we divvy that up will be up to the next legislative session. I like to believe that the folks that I know and our caucus have a great concern that we'll continue to address education, and so we're hopeful that the form is correct. The form is projecting that we will have a surplus, and so we'll have that, and then we're talking about the marijuana dollars. We should be able to do some things for education.
You've heard the argument, you just can't throw money at a problem, at the
Absolutely.
public education. Maybe there needs to be some reforms or out-of-the-box thinking with respect to that. How do you address those kinds of issues?
Well, I mean, again, those are issues that we've been looking at every session. I mean, we've done Zoom schools, we've done some of these other things, and again, those things take time to work. People can say you don't throw money at it, and while we believe that, we do have some other things that we should be throwing money at. The way that we pay our teachers in the state is embarrassing. And we as a state have to look at those types of things. When we have 35 and 37 kids in one classroom, and you're not throwing money at the problem. I mean, we're not suggesting that, but money does help some of those. You can build new schools and build classrooms and pay our teachers at a level that they should be paid. And no disrespect to the teachers that we have, because I think we have great quality teachers that should be paid, but certainly some of them at some point, like any other employment, the good ones end up getting away because they know that they are not being paid at the levels that they should be paid at. And so we've got to do better because that has to, we've got to continue to think of ways to educate the folks after us. We won't be here forever in these seats. You won't be here doing broadcasting forever in that seat. And we've got to make sure that we have an educated citizenry so that they can take our places at some point.
Let's talk about minimum wage, because there was an attempt, Senate Bill 106, to increase the state's minimum wage. Is there a possibility that might have some momentum in the next session?
I don't know. Look, these questions have come up all summer. You've been around quite some time. Sometimes numbers dictate everything. I've thought of legislation in November. Things have happened, and we've had to change course on some of that stuff. There are some folks, in our caucus and other caucuses, although they won't admit it, that people should have livable wages, and there's a concern for that. How we get there, I do think that needs to be an open door policy, and that all of us should be able to sit down at the table and talk about that and figure out how we get there as a state. There is this belief in my mind that you got Arizona and you got California, and you have some of these other states that have taken steps. No, they didn't go straight to a number. They've done some gradual things that will get them there over the years. But we will begin, again, just like the teachers, we'll begin to lose some of our best to other states because they see opportunities elsewhere. But we've just got to look at these numbers and see where we are. In a couple years, Nevada's going to be totally different, and I'm talking about a year and a half, 2 years, a totally different state than what we were a couple years ago. And so we're going to see increased housing. We're going to see increased just what people spend money on every single day. There's going to be increases in that because we're just going to be a different state, and we've got to have wages and stuff that keep up with that. However, we need to make sure that everyone's at the table having that discussion. One
last question, that has to do with term limits. Every session I go up, I feel like I've got reacquainted with a whole new group of people, right? Has term limits worked? Sometimes, you hear the argument, you lose that experience. It's good to see fresh faces and new blood and new thinking, but then you lose that institutional knowledge. Where do you fall out on that?
Look, for the individual that's not really taking a look at what has happened to the legislature. I was elected 16 years ago. I was in the legislature before term limits hit. There were some folks that had been there quite a long time, but I did it the old way. I ran against someone in my own party who I thought kind of was there wasting time, felt that it had passed him, and I took him on, I beat him. That was the end of his term limits. So he didn't have term limits, and And that's the way voters should have the opportunity to address anybody that they feel like either shouldn't be there or who's been there too long or who are no longer representing them. That's done at the ballot box. And I don't think that we should have, we've got great, great, great people. You look at the Barbara Buckleys of the world, and you look at even Speaker Perkins, and you look at, Conklin and William and some of these other folks, and to see that they had to leave simply because there's some document out there that says that they are no longer useful. I think that that's a travesty to the state. And you will always have very, very good people that I think deserve to be there just because they're great at what they do. And then you're going to have others that don't belong there. But I don't think that we should be using, the term limit as an excuse to do that. And I think term limits are better addressed by your name being on the ballot and individuals deciding, your community deciding, your constituents deciding that you should or should no longer be there.
Senator, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us, and also thank you for being a friend to Nevada's broadcasters, radio and television stations throughout the state.
And thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Anytime.
All right.
All right.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.